So the qualitative methods are embedded directly into the qualitative, the information is embedded directly into the module. And if you, and I don't know if that's preferable or not. That is a kind of an online design preference, but so I thought I'd try it. But like I said, if it doesn't jive with you at all, let me know and I'll continue doing what we were doing with the recordings. And if and I could go over it with a video too, so you can tell me kind of what you like better or worse. But one of the things that we're covering today, and I kind of started to introduce it, was about process mapping. Luke, you've already done this with me, so this may be more of a review, so just act surprised. So it fits into two major areas for you guys. So from a qualitative perspective, it's an important sort of an artifact analysis as part of ethnographic research, which is looking at kind of the cultural aspects of groups and how people interact. So from that perspective, it's really useful in helping us understand context. And so if we're thinking about that in terms of context, then we can see how it can also be beneficial in terms of quality, because at the core of Donna Bedian's work in quality outcomes and structured process outcomes, interaction and cooperation were his goal. He really cared about the administrator and the clinician working together in a symbiotic relationship. And if you were to read some of his very early work, especially his quality work, where we learned about structured process outcome and we go on and on about it, you would actually read a part that isn't as widely spoken about anymore, which was the importance of observation and the importance of the administrator and the clinician interacting and observing each other in their environment, and specifically the administrator observing the work of the clinician in order to truly gain an understanding of what goes on in the delivery of care. Because in essence, the clinicians are your patients. And that was a really important element that that's a little bit harder to package, right, in a framework or in a model, which is why it makes for excellent qualitative methodology and fodder, but it doesn't make it as convenient when we're trying to fit these quantitative models and put it into a SAS code and go, beep, beep, boop, boop, boop. It doesn't work. So, but it is critical. And overall, I hope that the message that you get as you review the qualitative module is that it is, I think, such an important element of the work that you do, because it's very easy to focus on becoming a great SAS programmer, becoming a great table maker, and just cranking out crosstabs, but you cannot lose the context and the fact that every number in there is a person, or every number in there is a hospital trying to survive. And so this is why I really like not just the qualitative methods elements, but specifically mapping, because it really forces you to stop and take a look around at what you're doing. Now, the activities that we have are kind of fun and very basic because we're online and we don't have that interaction opportunity that I would love. But hopefully this gives you an opportunity to engage in a similar practice. So with that, I just have a few slides. I know it looks like a lot, but there's extra slides for reference for you guys. So essentially, actually, let me go to my fancy SharePoint so we can look at it all pretty. Because I know that really matters. All right, so get this out of the way. Oh, really? Please stay tuned. Hold it. Okay, well, this has been all day with this on other calls I was on. Okay, so never mind, just kidding. We'll stick with Canvas. So process mapping has a lot of names. It can be called workflow redesign. I think Dr. Beck calls it something else. But essentially, it is a key improvement tool that we can use for a number of things. Identifying organizational culture, understanding how people interact, and more than anything, to improve a process. So to improve quality in a specific area of whatever you're doing. And the fundamentals that there are always two processes. You always start with the process as it is, not as you wish it could be. That's the key, okay? Because the purpose is that we want to see, are we doing what we say we're doing, or what's actually happening? So we do it with what is, not what we want it to be. The other thing to consider is that you are likely not the only person involved in the process. If you are the only one, then you probably don't need to do a process map. So think about that, is it really necessary? Because understanding these processes, mapping these processes, it typically takes a lot of people, and you need to identify those people because they probably need to contribute. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be one leader, but it is important that you do understand who's participating. And the great thing and a key benefit is that you can actually identify the people that are in the process that you may not have realized. And so that's also really helpful. The other really important thing that I want you to think about, and I'm not going to read them word for word because you guys can, but is that there is not one process to rule them all. You have to recognize that whatever process that you're doing, try not to process creep. The process that you're working on has to have a specific start and stop. You can't do a surgical process and say, oh, this will work for primary care intake, because it won't. So make sure that whatever process you're doing, make sure that you recognize what it's for. However, as I completely flip, there is overlap. So build room for flexibility, build room for pass-throughs or bridging within your processes, because that helps you increase efficiency. So when you do start getting a better idea of the processes in your organization, you may start to see some redundancies, and you may start to see where you can learn from other processes and cross-collaborate. And those are opportunities. So that's not necessarily a problem. And you'll see me saying process or workflow. I'm used to saying process, but that's because process mapping and systems. There's basically three types of process maps. There's high level, detailed, and swim lane. I'm going to focus on the detailed one because that's really where we can glean a lot, and everybody can understand them. High levels are very general processes. Detailed is the detailed process of those high levels. Swim lane gets very specific, and those are great for assigning tasks and strategic planning, but they don't typically tend to be very collaborative because they're a little bit harder to read, but they're actually really, really helpful. So here is what a high level versus a detailed, flowchart, that's the other word. This is what they look like. So if you were to look at a high level flowchart, if you notice, so just look at the top row, right? You arrive at the grocery store, walk to the cereal, pick up a box, walk to the cashier and pay for it, and then you leave. That's a high level flowchart. Main activities, start, stop. A detailed flowchart incorporates decision making. And that's the other benefit of the detail, is that we start to see details, we start to see feedback loops, we start to see delays, and we start to see switchbacks, things like that. So we arrive at the grocery store, so you guys can see that. Sorry, this is the swim lane one. It looks terrible, but it is what it is. The swim lane one is essentially a detailed one, but identifying the actors involved. So specifying their roles. So I know it's not very neat, but can you see kind of how we can see the customer and then the cashier switching out? But it's still essentially the same start, stop. Arrive, pay. Arrive, pay, right?
So Dr. Pino?
Yeah.
So would you just describe, pretty much just goes from like general to more specific as it goes down?
Oh yeah,
the list.
yeah.
Okay.
And then the big difference between the detailed and the swim lane is that Here, we don't know who's doing what for the most part. Whereas here, we're very specifically indicating who's in whose lane. If think about it in terms of each actor or each department. So this is almost like the org chart, if you will, of the project-based org chart, right? So the M form. And that's really, which is why I say this is not a good one for collaboration, because it's too hard to pick out each individual actor, and it's better to have everybody together because it's more collaborative, which is why I suggest the detailed one, whereas the swim lane one is good for once you've assigned tasks and everybody knows what they're doing. Does that make sense? So just some helpful tips. You want to try to involve all actors, right? You want to identify, you may not identify everyone, but you do want to get eyes on it and be willing to make it an iterative process, because it is an iterative process. So do not be married to your first process. I said process a lot, but hopefully that makes sense. Because it's going to change. The process will change. But what you can do as the lead on your process map is to emphasize that it's not what we wish it could be, but what it is. Because if you don't know where you're starting, you may not know what you need to work on or improve. So let's say you map things, right? So what's the whole point of this pretty picture map, whatever? Well, we can identify my favorite OFIs, which are opportunities for improvement. We can identify bottlenecks. We can identify roles or role ambiguity or role duplication. We can identify sources of waste for you Lean Six Sigma people. We can identify variation, which very often occurs during transitions. These are the danger points in care delivery, right? Is transition points, because that's where changes happen. Shift changes, that's a transition. Referrals, things where you're changing from one service to another. Transfers, anything like that is where there can be fragmentation. So this is what we can do. And then your second map can be where you wish you could go when you identify things. The other thing to think about is, where do you start? And that's where you can consider, it's called a prioritization matrix or an Eisenhower matrix. And you can think about things in terms of how everything is important and everything is urgent. And if you've seen these before, you can think about it in terms of the top right quadrant is what you do immediately if it's important and urgent. What's important is you look at how the X and Y axis are labeled too, by the way. And because what ends up happening is I've seen the red and the yellow quadrants flipped, but essentially you have to think about what your strategy and goals are. So impact on patient advocacy, if you link through, this was patient loyalty, so patients coming back. So this was probably more urgent than patient experience ratings for the hospital, right? Because you want people to come back, and then you want the high ratings. So this was absolutely the most important, because these are high urgency, high importance. So high patient experience rating, high loyalty activities. So this is what we react to the most. So they want to do really well with nurse communication. Then they want to do this next. Then you want to do this third, right? And these are the ones that you're like, we can get to them or we can delegate them, but we're not too urgent, because they're not going to make a huge impact on your patient experience ratings, and they're not going to make a huge impact on patient loyalty. So it just depends on what you're considering, okay? But that's how you prioritize work. This is what patients are prioritizing, for example, with HCAHPS. This is an HCAHPS example. You can do it for whatever you're prioritizing. So in your case, let's say you identify 3 OFIs, 2 bottlenecks, and 2 sources of waste, right? So then you're like, okay, well, what's going to cause an accident and make me look bad? So that can be your X and Y axis, right? Or something to that effect. What's urgent and what's important? So patient safety is urgent, and whatever else, your strategic plans are important, or whichever one you want. Does that kind of make sense? or you can do what your manager tells you to do. But usually, I mean, the reason you think about doing these prioritization matrices is because you want to make decisions that are transparent, and you can do that with evidence. And evidence helps you make decisions that you can justify without having to please every single person in the room, but build consensus with as many people as possible. And so when you make these visible decisions, this is how you can do that. Okay, so these are some reference about workflow tools on how to draw your own. So here's an example of reporting on clinical quality measures to CMS. So if you see, does your practice have a registry? Yes. If not, then whatever, so you can just follow the map through. Here's another one, documenting smoking status for patients 13 and up. Wow, okay. Here's another example of high level versus detail. And now it's your turn. Okay, any questions right now? No. Any questions? You know when you plan stuff and then it just goes awry? Okay, so you guys, I plan stuff and get so excited. And then when it doesn't work, I get so mad. Well, I don't get mad, but you know what I mean. Like nerdy mad. All right, 2 questions. 2 questions, 2 comments. Has anybody ever done one of these?
Yeah, I have. I actually got taught them by Jeff, who I think you taught, Jeff Jimenez.
Oh, no. He ruined it. Well, then everybody's going to want to be in Natalie's group or Luke's.
I've done one too, where I created a new workflow for pediatric patients.
Very good. Okay, then I'll make sure you're all in different groups, because now you're all going to do a process and you have about 3 minutes to do it. And there's a reason why. Okay. So in your group, these are the deliverables. You see these can you guys see this? My little pretty picture. It was a pretty picture embedded into the stinking thing and it just got ruined. I'm so upset right now. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's do 3 breakout rooms. And let me just make sure Luke is in one. Natalie. Oh, wait, Judith, I'm going to move you into room 2. Okay.
So what exactly are we mapping here?
Oh, I'll show. There you
Okay.
go. Yeah, somebody say that while I figure out how to move this person. How do I do that? Okay, I can't. Okay, I can't move them. All right, so I move them. Okay, I can't move any more people. So you're mapping that. You ready? Everybody understand?
Wait, what are you mapping? Sorry.
There's your process.
Oh,
Your
coffee.
process is coffee. You have to define start and end points. And the assumptions is that you have coffee in a coffee maker, but it's not a Keurig. Fancy people. You got it? Okay, room 2. I don't know why you have 6 people. I'm trying to take somebody out and I don't know how to. So, yeah, I'll figure that out. Okay? Any questions? All right, go make some processes. Why won't that let me move? All right. So do we have a reporter for each group? Yes? Okay. We'll start with, which group wants to go first? Why am I always the one that's excited? And no one else is. I don't understand. Okay, first of all, from each group, did you all agree on start and end points? Did everybody immediately agree on your start and end points? So group one, what were your start and end points? And was there immediate consensus? Group one, do you guys know what group you were in?
No.
Hold it. Brandy, Jacob, Justin, Luke, Tamron is group one. Room two is Jefferson, Judith, Kira, Thelma, Twee. Room three is everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, we all agreed. Our start point was like someone wanting a cup of coffee, and our end point was them drinking it.
So your start point was first triggered by wanting a cup of coffee.
Well, like ordering it. I want a cup of coffee, please.
Ordering a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Okay.
Or maybe not, or maybe you're ordering it from yourself. But
You get one answer, sir. One answer.
The thought of wanting coffee.
So do we see how this is starting to matter? The start and stops? Okay, group two. Just kidding, you walked right into that. Group two, start and stops.
We said grabbing the coffee grounds and then ending as drinking coffee.
Grabbing the coffee grounds. Like a handful of coffee grounds, or you just grab the coffee grounds?
We meant to put it in the bag, for like a bag of coffee grounds. That was the first step.
So what if you've never done this before, right? So let's say you are landing, an alien has come to visit the Earth, San Diego, and they've never made coffee before. So you have to be very clear, right? Okay, next one, group three.
We said to start by walking to the kitchen and end by drinking the coffee. So we were going for the homemade coffee route.
And location, I like that. Context. Longer process, but context. Okay. So, were there any disagreements on start and stop? Anybody? So it looks like everybody agreed on the endpoint, didn't you? Everybody ended up drinking coffee. That the starting point is where you all disagree. And none of you are wrong. So that is something that you want to take into consideration, right? So if we were in a hospital setting, some of the ways that we could do that is to employ some of our methods that we've used. So we could ask people, what is the most important thing about obtaining coffee? What are some of the barriers? What are some of the facilitators? What's important to you about drinking coffee? Where do you get your coffee? I know it seems silly, right? But are you guys feeling me? Okay, so how did you deal with any process disagreements? And how did you come to a consensus? Aside from ignoring each other, how did you deal with any disagreements?
Our only kind of disagreement was like, how detailed do we need to be?
That is actually very, very common.
And we quickly decided that since we only had a couple minutes to do this, we wouldn't be very detailed.
Sounds like a prioritization right there. Very good. Okay, anybody else? All right, I know I'm keeping you over. I apologize for that. So I'm sorry. I wish I had you guys in person. But the last thing I want to say is, did everybody have input? Did everybody feel like they contributed, or or if they wanted to. Okay, that's also really important because everybody, even if they hate coffee, surely they have a say in the process, right? Because we may hate coffee, but we care about a good quality cup of Joe because why not, right? Because we're all going to manage stuff. That's why we're here. All right, last thing, I just want to see what the mappers came up with, because there was one group that had I don't know if y'all were just ready to go from last night or what the deal was, but they had and please share the name of the program, because I was going to tell you guys there's a free mapping program called Lucid Charts that I use, that you guys can use that. And Natalie, if you've talked to Jeff, then you know all my tricks, so I can't impress you now. Jeez. So there, that's it. That's all I got. That was it.
It's called Lucid Charts
Lucid Charts.
with an L.
Lucid,
Okay.
like lucid most of the time. Show your chart, somebody, please. Somebody have a chart. So look at this. Oh, it was you, Luke. Luke does these for fun. I know this. I've heard this through the grapevine.
I do them because I'm paid to do them.
But what I really want you guys to see is that there's a clear start and end, and some decisions and some feedback loops. So this is a lot of fun. And it can be as simple or as detailed as you want it to be. The map that you'll do for your assignment is actually going to be your data, and it's very simple. But I wanted you to do it so that you have at least some practice. I'm actually going to get Jeff to give me one of his process maps, so you guys have the weekend mug. I just, you nerd. But that way you guys can see some different ones. And this is probably one of the most incredible, very low level activities that is so impressive to employers because they're so bad at this. So you guys being able to do this, I mean, ask Jeff, Natalie, it's such a helpful thing for you guys too, because it helps you understand how things work without you feeling like you can ask better questions so that you can identify process. It just, you making your own maps just about how, even how SAS works or how you want to code data, like your coding workflow, anything can be mapped and visualized. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm very visual. So I make these for everything, and it just makes a huge difference for me. And without further ado, I apologize for taking the extra 15 minutes of your time because I do value your time. So thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm here for questions if anybody has them, but you guys are free to go. I'll stop talking. I'll stop the video. Class is over.